The wheel of time is moving like a car. Everything is changing with the era. Vauxhall has changed with the wind of change. Vauxhall was founded in 1857 by Alexander Wilson. It started as a pump and marine engine manufacturer. In 1863, it produced travelling cranes, and the company became Vauxhall Iron Works, which in 1907 then became Vauxhall Motors. In 1903, Vauxhall started making cars. However, in 1905, it moved its production to Luton, Bedfordshire. Vauxhall changed the socio-economic status of Luton. Many people came to this town for work.
I was lucky because I was doing a summer work already in Vauxhall, which I applied for it, and they offered me a job. And I was hoping to just stay there for 6 months.
I started working at Vauxhall in September 1963.
My dad didn't want me to go leave Luton to find a job in London. Maybe I was lucky one to stay with them all the time. So I have to stay in Luton. So I carried on working in Vauxhall since 1978.
It's interesting. I had a university place to do mechanical engineering. My parents weren't particularly well off, so I wrote to all the motor manufacturers of the day, Jaguar, Austin, people like that, Vauxhall, to say did they have places for graduates or people who wanted to be graduates. And Vauxhall were the first to reply and made the most impressive pitch in the sense that what they were offering and the selection process looked something which I really wanted to do.
The first car was a 5-horsepower single-cylinder model. The car was steered using a tiller and only had 2 forward gears. At this time, they had no reverse gears. The contribution of Vauxhall during World War II is particularly memorable. They produced warships like tanks for Britain. Vauxhall started the production of the Vauxhall Viva in 1963. Following this in 1970, the launch of the Vauxhall HC Viva. For a decade, it was Vauxhall's best-selling car.
Vauxhall were huge in selling cars to businesses and rental companies and all the other definitions of fleet. So, and we were at a period where we just launched the Cavalier, the second model of Cavalier, front-wheel drive. It was superior to Ford's car, the aging Cortina. And then they brought out the Sierra, which was called the Jelly Mold, and people didn't really like the look of it. And we were just absolutely on fire with the Cavalier. We were almost forming orderly queues of customers. We had customers phoning us up saying, I want 30 more of these, and you say, well, you can't have them for 2 months. And it was extraordinary. And we really put Vauxhall on the map. We eventually ended up with 17% share of the UK market, which has never been beaten and really was quite extraordinary. Again, it can't happen now because the market is much more.
In 1972, the FE Series Victor was launched, which would be the last all-British Vauxhall. The Chevette was created in 1975, which increased Vauxhall's sales. This was a small 3-door hatchback car and one of the first of its kind to be built in Britain.
We were, of course, a wholly owned subsidiary of General Motors, and latterly we were really a subsidiary of Opel in Germany. But we still had a huge amount of ability to do our own thing and manage our own ship, and particularly in sales and marketing. We did all our own advertising, all of the big campaigns were ours, and we had a huge amount of fun, as well as selling a serious number of motor cars.
In 1980, the Vauxhall Astra was launched. The new Astra that was launched in 1984 became European Car of the Year. In 1984, Vauxhall's overall sales more than doubled. Due to the work environment and the proper evaluation of the workers, production of Vauxhall has gained momentum and also increasing the popularity day by day.
When I started, it was very physical, and it was interested because Vauxhall was large, 36,000 employees in there. It was built by Kempston Road, but both sides of the road, the factory was built up.
the whole plant was amazing. I mean, it had a heartbeat. It was almost, in those days, it was almost a town within a town. I mean, it had its own recreations areas, it had its own clubs, it had its own restaurants, it had its own, its own heartbeat. 3 shifts a day and a night shift. It was quite incredible, and it never went to sleep. I think there were 26,000 people in the plant in those days, which was unbelievable. Again, there were no computers. Most everything was done manually. It absorbed lots and lots of people doing that.
In 1993, the Vauxhall Corsa was launched, and this car was most popular car across the UK from 2002 to 2004.
As long as Vauxhall keeps performing, it has a future, but it's just a different future to the one that certainly I knew. A lot less people. Again, that's all part of the modern way of doing business. And you don't need all the premises, and you don't need all of the design facilities that you did when you're part of a bigger group. So yeah, it will change, but that isn't necessarily a reason to be depressed. It's just going to be different.
Vauxhall VXR8 GTSR was one of just 15 sold in the UK, and the most expensive Vauxhall car at £74,500 before it went off sale. Over the years, Vauxhall's headquarters changed. Based in Griffin House near Osborne Road, Luton, the site grew and developed over the years.
If you compare on that time and compare today, it's a lot easier because now you've got robots and everything building up the car. You don't do man physical. All you're doing loading in the job, and the robot does the whole operation for you.
The major changes whilst I was there, I guess the major change was obviously computerization, robotization, and general move towards electronic ways of doing business. I mean, we were one of the first actually in Vauxhall sales and marketing to do e-commerce. There was that was the biggest defining thing. You obviously needed less people to do complex tasks, and that made a huge difference to the numbers of people that you had on site.
In March 2017, General Motors reached a tentative agreement with Group PSA for the acquisition of Vauxhall and Opel. Both Opel and Vauxhall have been part of General Motors for nearly 100 years. The Vauxhall Heritage Centre was first established in 1948 in Luton. The current collection is a total of 75 cars, with the oldest car in the collection being from 1903. Over the years since 1920, the logo of Vauxhall has changed, but always kept its griffin. Vauxhall has centuries of tradition. Thousands of people have worked at this historic institution. So, the people of Luton still own the Vauxhall.